Today, we are going to talk about why the Byzantine emperors would hire professional criers. I mean, look, this whole absurd grief economy of Constantinople is just crazy. No, that's not cute. It's pretty strange and wild, and you almost certainly wouldn't last 10 minutes before crying or getting fined in barley. As you stomp along the marble halls in the Great Palace, sandals sticking to floors glazed with the goat pee and spilled myrrh, a guy in silk robes sobs so hard his fake beard goes for a tumble. Guess what? He's not even sad. He's clocking in. This is his third funeral today. Lunch break was figs and existential dread. Byzantium is a place where grief is not free but franchised. So, before you get settled in, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you do, but only if you want to. Leave your city and time in the comments if you're watching this. Bonus points if you're pretending to work. We've all been there. Grab some snacks. Mute mom. Let's get weird. You are a hired Imperial Crier Grade 3 sob specialist. Somehow that sounds fancy unless the details include things like weep on command during tax audits and simulate maternal loss when the emperor stubs a toe. And your uniform? Diluted squid ink-dipped tunic for eternally mourning look. Smells like low tide and regret. Historians still debate whether it was merely a convenient way to avoid laundry or had a more profound meaning. Who cares? You're sweating under 3 layers of ceremonial gauze, while a eunuch tells you to add more tremble to the lower lip. Fail? You don't get fired. You switch jobs to the Department of Public Toilet Blessings. Yes, that's real. No, you don't want details. Yet, the Byzantine court used to have protocols that compelled attendees to display somber and loud expressions during various events, such as funerals, coronations, or unfavorable outcomes of the harvest. Silence equals treason. Tears equals patriotism. Sniffles? Suspicious. Fun fact. The best criers were paid hazard pay for mascara runoff that damaged the imperial tapestries. They were paid in pickled lemons and used candles. Historians have had trouble drawing a clear line on whether or not Emperor Basil II made a demand for tears every fiscal quarter. Of course he did. Don't pretend that spreadsheet demons didn't run bureaucracy in slippers. Your first task will be the funeral for the 7th wife of Emperor Leo VI. She died of excessive poetry recitals. Which, fair. Next to the sarcophagus, you hold the wail sequence gamma, moderate despair, hint of betrayal. Script. As advised, you respond to a harp pluck with an elbow jab from the chief mourner. You launch into performance. Sobs echo off gold-plated walls. A senator drops his bread roll in awe. Success. Until you hiccup. Not a cute hiccup. A full-on I just ate a live frog hiccup. The room freezes. A person softly says, fake humidity. You get a lower ranking. Before dessert. Another way to put it, junior tier quality inspector. Job perk? You get to taste test royal tears for salt content. More on that nightmare later. Spoiler. Spoons were not provided. The economy runs on sorrow. Literally, to get a grief guild license, you need to pay 2 goats and get an affidavit from your mother. Unlicensed sobbing? Illegal. Are you sobbing in the produce aisle over a dropped melon? That's a Class B emotional violation. Your task, penalty, public apology via interpretive dance plus mandatory re-education in state-approved lamentation scales. 13 words. There's a pamphlet. It rhymes. You hate it. Also, your sandals are still sticky. And now there's pigeon poop on your left shoulder. Welcome to Tuesday. By 892 AD, mourners formed a labor union and requested overtime pay during eclipses. In addition, they also demanded ergonomic stools for crying. The strike disrupted 3 funerals and 1 uncomfortable birthday party for a general's pet peacock. Management caved. Result? Golden hankies for senior weepers. You don't get one. You grab a wet napkin and see the guy who's 100% defined by crying at the siege of Antioch. He probably has a hernia to prove it. And for the 3rd day in a row, lunch is cold lentils. With hair in it. Whose hair? Doesn't matter. Grief doesn't ask questions. Grief asks for volume. 2 bureaucrats are debating whether fake crying should be added to the National Mourning Index. One says yes if the cheeks glisten. The other demands saline lab reports. They settle it with dice. A tribute to the Ministry of Audible Sorrow sends you to pick olives. The olive seller winks at you and slips you an extra jar for your emotional labor. You want to hug him. Don't. If people make unwanted physical contact outside of state-approved gatherings, they will get punished. You've seen men broken by iambic pentameter. It's worse than the mines. By the end of the day, your eyes burn, your throat is dry, and your spirit? Leased to the Department of Ceremonial Despair. You pass a fresco of Christ weeping golden tears. He is not on the payroll, probably freelanced. You wonder if he got comp days. Doubt it. Even divinity couldn't escape Byzantine HR. You walk back home after the stores from the street performers who do tragic interpretations of grain shortages. People love performative suffering, especially when it's not theirs. You collapse onto your straw pallet. Your assignment for tomorrow is to simulate miscarriage grief for the decorative vase the visiting Persian dignitary will bring along. You're told to wear subdued devastation, optional ankle bells. You sigh. It doesn't count toward your quota. Life is pain and paperwork. Every day you wake up, a crust in your eye is 30% dry tear, 70% I did it again residue from yesterday's vase fail. A knock on the door by your landlord for unpaid rent? Not quite. You apparently didn't cry hard enough during last night's moon song. Penalty? Payable in olives. Again. You give 3 withered ones that you found in your sock drawer. He sniffs them like a sommelier judging vinegar. Acceptable, barely. He leaves. You're pretty sure he's also a part-time grief auditor. Everyone is. Constantinople doesn't do hobbies. It does mandatory melancholy. The Byzantine government had a way of tracking how people displayed their emotions. They recorded the amount of tears shed in each district, along with eligible lesions. Interesting detail. Some people would pay criers to stand outside their house and shout as loudly as they can in a bid to have the inspectors mark them as emotionally compliant. This means they did not need their property confiscated to get rehabilitated. Like many gray markets, this resulted in pre-cry contracts. Historians still debate whether Emperor Constantine VII personally reviewed the crime reports on the regions when having breakfast. Of course, he did. Who else would? Man ate sorrow like oatmeal, probably stirred it with a scepter. You walk back to the Ministry of Audible Sorrow, which is in the shape of a teardrop. Your job today is to weep and wail at a tax audit. Not metaphorically, literally. The auditor sitting across from you is a man named Demetrios who smells of stale incense and regret. He is holding a bunch of scrolls labeled Emotional Deductions. FI 897. Your task is to cry convincingly while he reads out loud how much grain you owe due to failure to impress at Imperial Funeral number 4, the one with the exploding incense burner. You fake sob into a state-issued linen square. He squints. Tear viscosity too thin. Suspiciously hydrated. You panic cry harder. A drop lands on his scroll. He smiles. Ah, authentic despair. You're approved. So you live to cry to play another day. Barely. Lunch break comes as a tepid porridge in a cracked bowl that once belonged to a dethroned clergyman. You sit next to Helena, Whaler Senior Grade 2, who is recovering from overexertion at a eunuch choir rehearsal. She dubs it Ode to the Fallen Chamber Pot, as she rasps that they made me hit the high note. My soul left my body. HR describes it as elegant. She presents a new ergonomic stool for crying. It features a padded velvet seat that tilts. There is a spittoon for post-cry phlegm. She has a mental break now and then. Union wins. You're jealous. Your stool has one leg shorter than the others. Every sob rocks you sideways like a drunk flamingo. The word is spreading that, when speaking to the public, the Emperor Leo VI might make it mandatory for them to drop their moisture. So, when the Emperor speaks, you'd better let something leak out of yourself, your eyes, your nose, your soul, whatever is available. A refusal to comply earns exile to Thrace, where the wind howls louder than you ever could and the goats file formal complaints about your lack of range. Also, Thrace has no olives, only rocks, and judgmental sheep. You practice crying in the mirror. Your reflection judges you back. Fair. A new junior bereavement consultant, after being assigned a simulation grieving for a sandal strap, minor noble status, vomits. The chief mourner pats him. Even the finest have undergone a similar experience. Do not worry about the strap. The kid whimpers. It's about the void the strap leaves behind. You hand him a hanky dipped in lavender and lies. It gets easier. Not at all. Now he is crying truly seriously. The chief nods approvingly. Promising. Assign him to the patriarch's naptime lamentations, light duty. Mostly whimpering. You hear two scribes arguing whether tears shed while waiting in line count for the month. One insists only structured sorrow qualifies. One suggests that tears shed in frustration by bureaucrats should receive double the points. They settle things by arm wrestling over a plate of smelly cheese. The winner gets to write the new regulation. Spoiler, the cheese wins. Nothing changes. Except now there's cheese on the scroll and possibly a mouse. By the afternoon, you've been assigned to the hippodrome for a grief pop-up. Emperor's chariot lost a wheel in training. National tragedy level. Medium spicy. You are standing next to a damaged axle holding a copy of script 12D. Whimpers for broken wheels, Imperial edition. A crowd gathers. You perform. A child throws a rotten fig at you. It's considered a compliment. You bow. Someone yells, "Do the one where your nose drips." You oblige. Applause. Tips on lentils. You're like a street performer, except with added paperwork and health insurance. It is evening, and you have been called for an emergency with the Empress who sneezed at Vespers. Upon receiving the news, you are told to follow a specified protocol for public grieving over the violated sanctity of royal mucus. Subsequently, you are given a new performance script, The Lament for Nasal Disruption, Key of Guilt Minor. Remember to perform this with a trembling lower lip plus a single tear unnoticed rolling down the left cheek. Fail? Reassignment to the Bureau of Unpleasant Odor Complaints. You've heard stories. One guy resigned after being pressured to smell test expired fish bribes for 3 weeks. He moved to Bulgaria. Said it was quieter. You don't blame him. On your way home, you pass street vendors selling authentic pre-blessed hankies. Lightly used, divine sniff guaranteed, and bootleg sob scripts on recycled parchment. One vendor offers you wail in a bottle, just add onions. You decline. Last time you used that excuse, you cried straight to a promotion, then demoted, then audited, then mildly excommunicated. It's been a week. Your pillow is damp. Not from sweat, from scheduled nocturnal grief drills. Even your dreams are unionized. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the ceiling inspector might be listening. Better fake a whimper, just in case. It's morning, and you find your face glued to the pillow. Not from drooling, but from the mandatory. Sorrowful lament for unfulfilled prophecies post-midnight before lights out. Moisten cheek against bedding for at least 47 seconds. Did script writers not account for sleeping? You were over 6 seconds on that note. Now your left eyebrow is glued sideways. You peel it off with a butter knife. It hurts. It counts toward today's tear quota. Silver linings, right? Moreover, right now your neighbor is outside wailing into a clay amphora, part of the new acoustic grief recycling initiative. His cries are collected and sold to provincial governors who can't afford live criers. You wave. He ignores you. Professional jealousy. His amphora has gold trim. Yours is chipped and smells like old onions. Not many people know this, but Byzantine criers were classified based on their volume, duration, and saline content. Inspectors would use calibrated glass tubes at state events to measure tear output. Surprisingly, the big money earners received saffron bonuses and signed portraits of weeping saints. Worst performers? Reassigned to Department of Dry-Eyed Disgrace, aka a place where bureaucrats go and die slowly while writing reports on other people's failures of emotion. Historians still argue whether Emperor Romanos I installed tyrometers in the hallways of his palace to make payment for crying automaton. Dude taxed air. Literally, if you breathe close to the treasury without permission, you should pay 3 dates and a scroll of apology. Your supervisor is a skinny man named Eustathios whose eyelashes are permanently clumped together, like Spider-Man with a bunch of internet memes, because he has been crying for days at work. And the topic of the day is handed over to you, Tier 3 sob performance at the Grain Commissioner's retirement banquet, i.e., a guy who counted barley for 40 years gets to stop, so cry. The director's notes say, moderate sadness with overtones of bureaucratic fatigue. You practice in the mirror. Add shoulder tremble. Check lower lip quiver. Check. Accidental snort laugh? Not check. Eustathios hears it. Appears behind you like a grief ninja. That's the noise of a sack full of potatoes. This is not a permitted whimper. You are told to pay up a half figure. Morale plummets. So does your pay grade. Welcome to the middle management in the Ministry of Misery. At the banquet, a roasted peacock with a small laurel crown stands beside you. Your sign comes after the third toast, which is a gong and an elbow jab. You start playing a mournful musical piece about not retiring. Tears flow. The crowd murmurs appreciatively. A senator throws rose petals. One lands in your mouth. You swallow it. Tastes like despair and pollen. You hiccup again mid-performance with the same frog-like energy as yesterday. Gasps ripple through the room. The retiring commissioner glares. His wife fake sobs louder to cover your blunder. Heroic. You owe her olives. Or possibly your firstborn. Contractual fine print is vague. Lunch is a grief gruel. A room temperature sludge served in a bowl shaped like a crying cherub. You are seated beside Niketas, who is a professional crier. He lost his voice in the Great Chant Purge of 891. After this point, he could only speak in grand interpretative shrugs and moist eyes. He passes you a note with the following message. Rumor alert, tier-based currency set to be tested. Cry in a vial. Trade for bread. Salter tiers mean a higher value. You raise your eyebrow. He nods solemnly. He points to his own dark eye bags, which are exchangeable for currency. You wonder if you can cry directly onto tax forms. Probably illegal. Definitely tempting. At the ministry, you are forcibly taken into an emergency meeting of the Empress after the gazelle died from eating a cursed pomegranate. National mourning level. Sparkly tragedy. Your role is to deliver the script titled Weeping for Hooved Innocence, Royal Pet Edition. It must include an audible sniffle every 12 seconds and a full body collapse in the climax. Rehearsal goes poorly. You trip over your own robe. Collapse too early. Eustathios takes points off for unscripted pratfall energy. You say that makes it real. He argues realism doesn't come with a hazard bonus. You lose. Again. In the middle of the afternoon, you will audit the work of a junior crier. Their job was to mimic the mother's grief as the noble screamed. Junior crier laughed instead. Tribunal of Emotional Integrity now tries him. You sit in the gallery taking notes. Prosecutor holds up a hanky. Exhibit A barely damp. The defense claims the junior suffered emotional constipation due to poor fig rations. The jury sobs in sympathy. Verdict, guilty. In the sorrow sauna, the trainees undergo 2 weeks of re-education. Here, they listen to lullabies sung by eunuchs until they break. You've been there, still have nightmares and mild scarring. As you leave, you walk past the grief bazaar where there are stalls selling knockoff sob scripts, bootleg saline enhancers, just add seawater, and authentic Imperial sniffles in blown glass. A local vendor has wail enhancer pills, guaranteed crocodile tears, or your misery back. You decline. Last guy who took them cried so hard he floated away. 3 days later, he was found clinging to the dome of the church, whimpering, and was promoted. Life's unfair like that. Evening assignment. Pretend to grieve for library scroll in the poetry section. You find a blank piece of paper and clutch script 4G, sobs for the unwritten. Allegedly, you have to convey the tragedy of potential never realized. So you give it your best shot. A monk applauds, then asks if you do weddings. You say yes. He says, good. My cousin is marrying a tax collector. You don't correct him. We need someone who can cry on command and calculate compound interest. Just take the deposit in dried apricots. Desperation smells sweet. Also sticky. You collapse into bed with sore eyelids and a scratchy throat. Outside, the neighborhood crier whacks his amphora with extra strength, probably to cash in his overtime. You pull the blanket over your head. Too late. The ceiling inspector's shadow passes under the door. You fake a whimper. He pauses, nods, leaves. You sigh. Doesn't count. but you're too tired to care. Tomorrow's assignment: funeral dirge for a broken sundial. Time literally stopped, and so did your will to live. But hey, at least you're not in Thrace. Yet, you awaken to synchronized weeping outside your window. It's the neighborhood's new dawning lament choir, funded by a grant from the Patriarchate of Performative Penitence. They are singing together Ode to Unwashed Sandals, Morning Edition, in 4-part harmony. One guy's off-key. The conductor whips out a ruler. You cover your ears. People do not cry during the sanctioned dawn wail because it hurts. They are, however, afraid not to cry. Otherwise, the punishment they incur from the government is the fine of pickled beets. And not the good kind. The kind that stains your tunic and your dignity. Missing out on a public crying event mandated by the government could result in social banishment. Your name wouldn't be sent to prison, but it would be put on a dry-eyed registry. This meant not getting promotions, festival invites, or a front-row seat at chariot races, for instance. An unusual, little-known fact is that people on the registry were forced to wear tunics. These tunics were embroidered all over with tiny frowning faces, and were also known as simply the sad badge of shame. Scholarly debate phrase incoming. Historians still argue whether Emperor Nikephoros II made registry offenders attend mandatory laughter suppression seminars. Obviously, he did. Guy outlawed smiling within 50 paces of the palace. He called it aesthetic treason. His own likenesses look like he permanently smelled expired yogurt. Coincidence? Never. Your scroll for today comes by carrier pigeon and, yes, really, is tied to his leg with a damp ribbon. Emergency assignment: the Imperial Banquet Hall of Echoing Regret. Theme: sobbing while snacking. Failure equals reassigned to GOAT PQC. You smirk. You remember the last time you tried this? You choked on a lentil during the sob and got in trouble for unauthorized cough grief fusion. Also, your robe still smells like barley. You arrive early to rehearse. The table's already set. Golden plates, jeweled goblets, and centerpieces with weeping willow branches dipped in resin, so they cry forever. Classy, also creepy, like dinner hosted by a sentient funeral. Eustathios greets you and opens the door while holding a clipboard and a vial of emergency saline enhancer. Citrus burst flavor. He spritzes your eyes. It burns. Authenticity boost, he croaks. The Empress dislikes weeping very much. They lack sufficient seriousness or depth. You blink. Tears flow. He nods. Good. Now remember, chew slowly. Sob rhythmically. And for heaven's sake, don't laugh if the fool goes falling into the soup again. Too late. You remember last month. Jester tripped. Soup splashed the treasurer. You laughed. You got promoted to tier sampler for imported onions. Worst 3 days of your life. Still twitch when you smell chives. The banquet begins. You find yourself sitting between a general who only cries through his nose and a eunuch who cries in perfect iambic pentameter. We get our plates. Stuffed quail, honey-coated figs, and barley cakes seasoned with grief. Yes, that's a thing. Ground-up hankies optional. The chief mourner plays a harp sound and stomps his foot as the cue for the first course. Script 7C, lament mid-mastication, regal dining tier. Chew, sob, swallow, repeat. A crumb gets stuck in your throat. You cough. The room freezes. Someone gasps. Is that dry heaving? Panic. You fake a louder sob. Cover it with a dramatic forehead-to-table collapse. Applause. Crisis averted. Also, now there's quail juice on your scroll. Doesn't matter. Moisture is moisture. During the banquet, the emperor suddenly made a toast to his favorite horse, which was suffering from hoof rot. National joy level, suspiciously high, which means mandatory countergrief. That's a lot of trouble. Why not simply draw near to me? You are given an emergency addendum that states, no tears of joy. Please change that to sorrow in 10 seconds. You scramble. Think sad thoughts. Dead pets. Tax audits. Your landlord's breath. Works. Tears flow. The emperor nods approvingly. Whispers to his advisor. See, you're certain he's writing a self-help and parenting book. Crying your way to power. Moisture is majesty. After we finish toasting, Dessert arrived. Wheat berry tart. A pastry filled with salted custard that will make you cry. You take a bite. Eyes water instantly. Eustathios checks his tirometer. 92% saline. Excellent. Bonus figure. You pocket it. Might bribe the ceiling inspector later. Across the table, the nasal general sneezes mid-sob. Mucus arcs onto the eunuch's scroll. Chaos. Servants dive with silk cloths. The eunuch doesn't flinch. Just keeps sobbing in perfect meter. Legend. You aspire to his composure. Or his lack of sinuses. Task after the party. Over the bread leftover grief concert. Yes, really. You're standing next to a basket of expired dinner rolls. Holding script 11H. Sobs for unconsumed carbs. Sacred Waste Division. You must communicate the tragedy of abundance ignored. And you're really trying. A kitchen-enslaved person applauds. Later, you receive another, less stale roll for emotional labor. You accept. It's dry. So are you. But you fake cry anyway. Habit now. Muscle memory. Soul erosion. As you stagger home, you see the Night Weepers Guild. Cloaked figures crying into oil lamps to bless the darkness with moisture. One offers you a shift. Midnight lament for expired incense contracts. Having been compensated in candle stubs and existential dread, you refuse payment. Your eyeballs feel like sandpaper wrapped in regret. Your pillow beckons. You flop onto it. The ceiling inspector's shadow slides under the door. You whimper on cue. He leaves. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the floorboards creak. Probably the floorboard auditor. You sniffle preemptively. Better safe than socially exiled. Tomorrow's assignment. Pretend you are sad for someone who has a very scratched jewel box. First world problems. Your problems? Still involves olives. And possibly goats. Always goats. You wake up with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth. Not from thirst, but because of last night's mandatory midnight lament for expired honey rations due to script requirements of audible tongue clicks between sobs to signify scarcity. You overdo it. Now your saliva glands are on strike. You drink brine from a clay jug labeled emergency moisture. State approved. Tastes like regret and low tide. Works. Eyes water instantly. The ceiling inspector hears it. Nods through the keyhole. You wake up to a sticky note that reads, "Sufficiently muggy before dawn." You pocket the +1 fig voucher. Let's trade it for silence later. Doubtful. Byzantine criers were provided with state-regulated silk and burlap handkerchiefs. Elites got silk, trainees got burlap, and fined for insubordination. The handkerchiefs of senior weepers were custom embroidered, with their speciality described on them in gold thread. Yours would read, "Choke sob hybrid artist, banquet division." Opening phrase of scholarly debate. Historians note that Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitos would suddenly inspect Hankies' cleanliness. And he certainly did. Of course, he did. A bishop got fined by a man for using a napkin that lacks sufficient grief patina. The bishop cried. Got promoted. Irony is the empire's favorite spice. The messenger hired for just that job informs us about today's assignment by crying. He falls at your door and starts screaming. Script 0, Bearer of Burdens, Tear-Drenched Edition. He unrolls your scroll between gasps. All criers must use silk hankies during the spring equinox lament. Imperial Decree. Burlap users are demoted to snot quality control. You sigh. Last week, a eunuch solo aria was interrupted by a display of mucus that caused you to get confiscated. According to the official take, unauthorized nasal expulsion during sacred vibrato. According to the unofficial one, the eunuch was pissed because you outsobbed him at the siege of Syracuse. You take Helena's backup silk square. It smells like lavender and suppressed rage. She warns you not to get snot on it. I'm still paying off my last fine in pickled quail eggs. You promise. At the equinox ceremony, you find yourself next to a marble obelisk inscribed with the words, "Tears feed the soil of empire." Quite profound. Also, an excuse to avoid actual farming. The chief mourner strikes a gong. For script 5e, symmetrical tear paths down both cheeks must happen as they weep for balanced sorrow. You aim for precision. Wind gusts. Left tear veers toward the ear. The right tear plunges into the collar. Eustathios scribbles notes. Asymmetrical output. You mutter curses for a puny gift. Silently. Suppose you are ever caught cursing audibly while state cries are being recited. In that case, you will automatically get reassigned to the Department of Unpleasant Echoes, where you must listen to triple tax codes until you cry. Rumor says one guy developed a twitch. Another started composing lullabies for spreadsheets. Dark times. Mid-ceremony, disaster. A pigeon swoops down and steals a ceremonial loaf of bread from the altar and shits on the patriarch's mitre. Gasps. Silence. First protocol demands grieving for spoiled dough. You're given emergency addendum gamma. Crying for chicken betrayal. Sublime crumb division. Must include hand to chest plus gaze towards heaven pleading for better pest control. You launch into it. Nail the gaze. Overdo the clutch. Rip your tunic. Exposed shoulder. Crowd murmurs. Not scandalized, impressed. Your shoulder showing while you lament a state equals extra points for vulnerability aesthetics. Eustathios gives you a figure. Progress. The silk-only sob symposium is the mandatory workshop for lunch break. Hanky etiquette during multi-tiered grief sequences. People who cry excessively can have a problem with their handkerchiefs. The instructor is a woman named Theodora, because she supposedly cried so hard once that she dissolved a wax tablet. Newbie Theodora demonstrates, as you can imagine, the wrong technique using her own handkerchief tray, the dab versus the drag. According to her, dab is the aristocrat's way of restraining. Drag is for peasant-grade despair. Mix them? That's heresy. Or performance art. It depends on the auditor you practice with. Dab wrong. Smudge eyeliner. Being scolded for unauthorized cosmetic migration. Painful life is. And paperwork. Mostly paperwork. Afternoon task. Funeral for a broken mirror. Yes, in the Imperial bathing wing. The Emperor dropped his self-reflection device while checking out his new crown. National crisis level. Vanity wounded. You receive script 8K. Sobbing for broken self-image. Regal weakness tier. Required includes 3 choked gasps plus 1 full collapse onto shard-strewn floor. Safety briefing. Avoid arteries. Crying is mandatory. Bleeding is optional. You rehearse. Trip. Fall early. Cut knee. Eustathios sighs. Dramatic, but unscheduled. Without a lentil, you say blood gives realism. He argues realism doesn't come with free bandages. You lose. Again. Join us tonight for the moonlit memorial for lost perfume recipes. You stand at an empty amphora holding script 3M lament for evaporated essence. Olfactory tragedy. Your performance must evoke the scent of absence. You sniff. Smell goat pee and yesterday's grief gruel. Improvise. Fake sneeze. You could call it an allergy to forgotten luxury. The crowd is buying this narrative tips of dried rose petals. You sneeze again. Real this time. Nasal spray from lunch kicks in. Spray hits the front row. Senator wipes face. Doesn't complain. Just whispers. Authentic moisture. You think he might want the job you have. You walk by vendors on your way home. One of these has pre-moistened hankies. They are lightly blessed, no refunds. The other sells emergency sob lozenges. These are guaranteed to give you crocodile tears or your soul back. One of them offers you hanky insurance covers snot, blood, or accidental laughter. You decline. The last guy to buy it laughed at a funeral, was sued by the widow, and paid his debt doing interpretive dance and still performing in chains. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the wall inspector's shadow looms. You whimper. He leaves. You collapse onto your pallet. Outside, the dawn choir rehearses tomorrow's lament. You stuff figs in your ears. Forbidden, but worth it. Tomorrow's task is to perform grief for a misplaced sandal. Left foot only. 11 words. Always prioritize. Subsequently, you are given a new performance script, the lament for nasal disruption, key of guilt minor. Remember to perform this with a trembling lower lip plus a single tear unnoticed rolling down the left cheek. Fail? Reassignment to the Bureau of Unpleasant Odor Complaints. You've heard stories. One guy resigned after being pressured to smell test expired fish bribes for 3 weeks. He moved to Bulgaria, said it was quieter. You don't blame him. On your way home, you pass street vendors selling authentic pre-blessed hankies, lightly used, divine sniff guaranteed, and bootleg sob scripts on recycled parchment. One vendor offers you wail in a bottle, just add onions. You decline. Last time you used that excuse, you cried straight to a promotion, then demoted, then audited, then mildly excommunicated. It's been a week. Your pillow is damp, not from sweat, from scheduled nocturnal grief drills. Even your dreams are unionized. You sigh, doesn't count, but the ceiling inspector might be listening. Better fake a whimper, just in case. You wake up, fig still stuck in your ear, not to silence the noise, but because last night's wall inspector caught you not weeping during the dawn choir's Ode to Unlaced Sandals, Left Foot Edition. His report, auditory obstruction equals emotional evasion. Penalty, double olives and regular hanky hygiene seminar. You take away his figs. One sprouted mold. You eat it. The Grief Guild's pamphlet on nutrition recommends fungi, which can help develop character. Also, you're hungry and morally flexible before noon. Real fact, people who fake tears get branded with the leaking eye sign. This branding often takes place on the forearm. Discontented eunuchs usually burn the lecherous eye sign with a soldering iron. Quirky tidbit. Repeat offenders were moved to the Bureau of Suspicious Moisture, where they spent their days sniffing strangers' cheeks to see if they cried. This phrase, historians still argue whether Emperor Basil I instituted tear trials where accused fakers were forced to watch puppies reunite with owners to test reflex weeping, has a prominent author in its fake historian. Once, a man cried so hard at the sight of a kitten sneezing that he made it a holiday, then taxed it. Efficiency. A crying homing pigeon brings us today's scroll. The bird has seen things. In a crashing descent, it lands on your windowsill and begins to squawk. Script 0B. Bearer of emotional burdens, feathered division. You unroll the scroll from its leg. Oh, your tier output has been tagged as suspiciously consistent by the Audit Office of the Chamber of Leaky Truths. You are now required to report for verification. Not this. In the chamber, they lock you to the lacrimator, a brass device measuring your saline levels, while you are forced to watch mosaics of abandoned sandals. You've heard screams, mostly about footwear. Put on your least offensive tunic, the one with I red heart bureaucratic sorrow in fading thread. Irony won't save you, but it might confuse the guards. Eustathios is waiting in the chamber beside the table of vials and pipettes, and a sad onion. Standard procedure, he drones. We'll set your standard using controlled stimuli. The first test is to look thoughtlessly at a child dropping an ice-cold melon. You whimper on cue. Device hums. A reasonable viscosity. Second test. Listen to the recording of a singing eunuch who strangles both lullabies. You fake a sob. The device beeps angrily. Inconsistent pitch. It's suspicious. The third test. Smell the onion. Real tears flow. Device purrs. Organic response. Probably. He scribbles notes. The final test. Look at that. It's a wall painting of a crowned goat. You blink. Is this a joke? He doesn't smile. This is a personal project of Emperor Michael III. The tragedy of caprine ambition. Cry or be stamped. You gaze, goat smirks. You laugh, big mistake. Alarms blare. Guards drag you to the branding bench. The eunuch brandisher sighs. Again. You're here so often now. He warms the teardrop iron. You bargain. What if I cry now? Extra salty. With snot. He pauses. Make it convincing. I could also place a second eye. Launch into script 9Z. Last-minute lament for my own poor decisions. Sob hard. Real tears. Snot is optional but included. Device whirs. Saline levels acceptable. Barely? The eunuch said and lowered the iron. Lucky. Before, a man chuckled at the goat fresco, but was later transferred to Thrace. A sheep was made to marry him. You shudder. Thank him. He shrugs. Just doing my job. Also, tip in olives next time. My kids need shoes. And therapy. After you have gone through a post-audit kind of exercise, you are given a new assignment, namely a simulated bereavement for a lost bookmark, Imperial Library Wing. You position yourself next to a blank sheet of parchment with script 6L in hand. Sobs for an interrupted reading of the sacred marginalia division. I must communicate the tragedy of narrative abandonment. You give it your all. A librarian applauds, then whispers, "Do you do funerals for overdue scrolls? We have a backlog," you nod. Take a deposit in ink-stained bread. Desperation fuels the empire. The lunch menu is audit recovery gruel, served in a bowl that looks like a weeping scale. Helena's here and she's got a new brand. A small teardrop on her wrist. "Promotion," she rasps. "I now examine other people's fake tears." Full circle. In addition, onions are free. She hands you a vial. Emergency saline. Citrus burst. You hug her for when the goat fresco judges you. Mistake. Automatic admission to the poetry slam for public affection outside coverage. You're scheduled for tonight. The theme for this year's haiku festival is Odes to Mild Disappointment. You've begun writing yours. Roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for sanity's sake. In the afternoon, a meme called The Great Hanky Recall shows up. God is recalling half of the silk squares given out the previous month. Turns out heretics weaved the squares, and the threads were blessed with insufficient sorrow. Your job is to go door to door collecting the offending handkerchiefs. One woman refuses. "My husband took his last breath on this handkerchief." You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You present her with an alternated approved by the state. Burlap with I red heart, Imperial compliance, sewn in cheap thread. She sobs real tears. You record it as something that happened naturally. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is a nightmare. You recite your ode. Crowd murmurs. Your judge, a former crier who lost his voice screaming at tax auditors, bestows you with the title of most likely to survive another week. The prize? A less than fresh candle and a coupon for one free sob session. Excludes funerals and goats. You accept it. Leave early. The Night Weepers Guild sings Lament for Forgotten Coupons under a lamp outside. You join them. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a crumb. Pecks your finger. Draws blood. Doesn't apologize. Probably unionized. The event tomorrow is funeral of a scratched harp string. So did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not engaged to a sheep. Yet, your snoring wakes you up at dawn. A forbidden noise in Byzantine grief law. Sorrow can't be expressed by activities when the sun is down. Punishment. 1 olive plus must attend union's loud sleepers rehabilitation choir. You're grown. Roll over. Step on the pigeon. Squawks. Not in pain. In protest. You found that you owe it hazard pay for emotional labor performed while perched on hostile surfaces. So you toss it a moldy figure. It eats it. Then they file a formal complaint anyway. This is probably a representative of the union for the CRYERS Guild. Mainstream fact. The CRYERS Guild held the empire's first labor strike on record in 894 AD after demanding hazard pay for mascara runoff, ergonomic crying stools, and compensation for soul erosion. Quirky detail. They succeeded after threatening to go silent on the birthday of Emperor Leo VI, which was so unimaginable that the palace caved in a matter of hours. Historians continue to argue over whether the success of the strike was due to emotional leverage. However, the emperor could not stand the thought of cake and sobbed, which was obviously the case. A man once cried because his grapes were too symmetrical. Aesthetic overload. He probably had a panic room lined with hankies. A carrier goat wearing a tiny saddlebag with the guild seal on it delivers today's homework. The seal appears to be a teardrop crushing a spreadsheet. Negotiating new sob contracts with management urgent. Bring snacks and tears. As you arrive at the guild hall, a dilapidated villa adorned in damp silk drapes that read, "Our tears build empires, and our backs hurt." You see Helena standing on a soapbox made of stacked tax scrolls, shouting through a bronze megaphone shaped like a weeping cherub. They are trying to make us fight on lunch again. Without paid recovery time, the crowd roars. Or sobs. Hard to tell. You have been handed a clipboard. Tierfare demands draft number 7. Highlights are saline bonus over 50% for mourning. You must take naps between funerals. Crying in your sleep doesn't count. That's unregulated moisture. All club members can receive complimentary onion vouchers to ensure baseline tier readiness. We are not chariot wheels or golf carts, and we don't appreciate sudden gong cues. Management representatives sit across the table, the 3 eunuchs in velvet robes, with a guy holding the tirometer like it's Excalibur. Our lead negotiator, Eustathios, yes, that Eustathios, apparently he's also a director of emotional compliance, clears his throat. The state values your wet donations, but hazard pay for mascara? That's cosmetic, not constitutional. Helena bangs her fist. My eyelashes are permanently fused. That's a workplace injury. The room gasps. Someone faints into a strategically placed hanky basket. Negotiations stall. You could sell it better with a compromise. How about getting golden handkerchiefs and free lint rollers? Eustathios scoffs. Golden hankies are for senior weepers who've cried at least 3 coronations and 1 volcanic eruption. You counter. Then let us deduct dry cleaning costs from our barley stipend. He blinks. That's oddly reasonable. Scribbles note. Progress? Maybe. The goat outside just ate a scroll that says draft agreement. Oops. The food served during lunch break is called Union Solidarity Stew. It comes from cauldrons with the label batch number 3. With extra salt TO give US bargaining power. You sit next to Niketas, whose communication consists of half-hearted shrugs and aggressively damp eyes. He hands you a slip of paper. I heard word from management that scabs will be getting hired. Budget CRYERS from Thrace. You spat out your stew. It will sob for olives and words. Scabs? During a strike? That's emotional treason. Helena hears you. Grins. Perfect. We'll stage a silent sit-in outside the ministry. No tears. Just staring. That's okay. I can help you. Receive the title of Frontline Moisture Ambassador. Your job is to look sad but not too sad. It is a skill or a talent. You and 200 other weepers stand outside the Ministry of Loud Sorrow with a blank scroll and an unscented handkerchief. No sobs. No sniffles. Just quiet despair. Tourists mistake it for performance art. Toss coins. One noblewoman cries for you. Gets gently escorted away by guild enforcers. Unauthorized empathy. They whisper. It disturbs the vibe. Eustathios pokes his head out from a window. Looks nervous. Good. Evening brings a breakthrough. Management caves. The new contract includes golden handkerchief for 10 years of service. You are eligible for 7.5. Onion stipend doubled. No gongs before noon policy. Free therapy scrolls. How to grieve without losing your mind. Spoiler. You will. Celebration party at the guild hall. Free wine. Also free onions. You eat 3. Cry real tears. No one audits you. Bliss. A bard sings Ballad of the Moist Rebellion. Chorus. Asterisk. We wept for them / they paid in gold / now watch us cry / for slightly less cold. Asterisk you dance. Badly. Twisted ankle. Don't care. A union representative hands you a golden hanky. For future use. Or framing. I am bartering for silence. Apologies. You clutch it. Feels weirdly heavy. Like hope. Or lead. You stumble home. Drunk on victory and cheap wine. Ceiling inspector waits. You show him the golden hanky. He nods. Leaves without auditing first time. You collapse onto a pallet. Pigeon coos. You offer it a golden thread. Swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow's task: fake crying for tax refund announcements, with maximum irony. Also, you're pretty sure joy tears are taxed extra. Life finds a way even when you unionize. You wake up with your face smushed against the golden hanky, not romantic, not luxurious, just sticky from drool and residual onion fumes. The pigeons perched on your chest, pecking at the embroidery. That state-sanctioned emotional property, you mumble. It ignores you, swallows a thread, files a silent grievance with its beak. You're pretty sure it's drafting a union pamphlet titled asterisk, Wings of Oppression, a carrier's lament. Asterisk, you roll over. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You whimper into the hanky. He leaves. Small victories. Mainstream fact: Byzantine weddings required professional criers to simulate grief for the death of maidenhood, even if the bride was 47, thrice widowed, and visibly relieved. Quirky tidbit: contracts stipulated minimum 3 audible sobs per veil lift, and no smiling during dowry announcements. Penalty: reassignment to funeral backup choir. Open scholarly debate phrase incoming. Historians still argue whether Emperor Romano's 2 mandated prenuptial cry rehearsals to soften the blow of marital bureaucracy. Obviously he did. A man once cried because his wedding cake had too many layers, called it emotional overindulgence, then ate it anyway. Priorities. Today's scroll arrives via blushing messenger. A kid hired specifically to deliver emotionally delicate assignments. He hands you the parchment while fake sobbing. Script 2. Bearer of matrimonial misery. Message: royal decree. Attend wedding of general's 3rd daughter. Simulate maternal grief. Fail equals reassignment to Bureau of Unpleasant In-Law Complaints. You groan. Last time you pulled this gig, you accidentally laughed when the groom tripped over his own sword. Got demoted to tier sampler for suspiciously moist handshakes. Worst week ever. Still flinch at formal greetings. The wedding venue is the Hall of Whispering Vows. Marble floors, gold drapes, and centerpieces made of wilted roses dipped in resin, so they weep forever, quietly. Bride's mother clutches your arm. Make it convincing, she hisses. Her first 2 husbands died. 3rd time's the charm. Or curse. Either way, sob like you mean it. You nod. Take a position beside the altar. Chief mourner gives cue. A harp pluck plus discreet elbow jab. You launch into script 10W. Lament for lost innocence. Nuptial edition. Chew cheek. Think sad thoughts. Tax audits. Expired olives. Your landlord singing. Works. Tears flow. Mother-in-law applauds silently. Nods. Bonus fig incoming. Mid-ceremony. Disaster. The groom's best man sneezes directly into the sacred unity chalice. Gasps. Silence. Protocol demands immediate grief for desecrated nuptial fluids. You're handed emergency addendum delta. Sobs for contaminated communion. Spit division. Performance must include clutched throat plus upward gaze, as if begging heaven for better immune systems. You nail it. Crowd murmurs. The bride faints into your arms. You catch her. Also, catch her bouquet. Eustathios scribbles notes. Impressive improvisation. +1 golden thread. Progress. Reception assignment. Simulated sorrow for uneaten cake. Yes, the 5-tier monstrosity sits untouched. Apparently, the bride's allergic to marzipan. National tragedy level. Sugar wasted. You stand beside the confection, clutching script 5P. Weeping for unconsumed sweetness. Sacred dessert tier. Must convey the tragedy of potential never licked. You give it your all. A guest applauds, then offers you a slice for emotional labor. You decline. Last time you ate on duty, you choked mid-sob. Got written up for unauthorized cough grief fusion. Again, lunch break is post-nuptial sob symposium. A mandatory workshop on crying while dancing without smudging eyeliner. Instructor Zoe, a woman who once wept so hard that she dissolved a wax tablet during a waltz, demonstrates the spin and sniff technique. Spin left, sniff right. Mix them? That's heresy. Or avant-garde. Depends on the auditor. You practice. Spin wrong. Trip. Rip tunic. Exposed shoulder. Crowd murmurs. Not scandalized, impressed. Shoulder exposure during state laments equals bonus points for vulnerability aesthetics. Eustathios adds another golden thread. You're basically rolling in luxury. Or lint. Afternoon brings the great dowry dispute. Bride's family claims groom's gift of one slightly used war chariot constitutes emotional undervaluation. You're summoned to mediate. Job? Cry on both sides until someone compromises. You sob for the bride. She deserved at least 2 chariots. Then sob for the groom. He fought barbarians for that rust bucket. The crowd sways. Deal struck? Chariot plus 1 goat. You take payment in cheese. Desperation fuels diplomacy. Evening assignment. Funeral for a broken vow. Annulled marriage wing. You stand beside a shredded contract. Clutching script 7R. Lament for shattered promises. Legal fragility tier. Must include 3 choked gasps plus 1 full collapse onto parchment shards. Safety briefing. Avoid ink stains. Crying is mandatory. Legal literacy is optional. You rehearse. Trip. Fall early. Cut knee. Eustathios sighs. Dramatic, but unscheduled. Minus a lentil. You argue that blood enhances realism. He argues realism doesn't come with free bandages. You lose. Again. You trudge home past vendors selling pre-blessed wedding hankies, lightly used, divine sniff guaranteed, and emergency sob lozenges for in-laws, guaranteed crocodile tears or your dignity back. One offers you marital moisture insurance, covers snot, blood, and accidental laughter during vows. You decline. The last guy who bought it laughed during "Till death do us part," got sued by the priest, and paid his debt in interpretive dance, still performing. In leg chains. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the wall inspector's shadow looms. You whimper. He leaves. You collapse onto your pallet. Outside, the dawn choir rehearses tomorrow's lament. You stuff golden threads in your ears. Forbidden, but worth it. Tomorrow's assignment, simulated grief for a misplaced ring, left hand only. Priorities. Always prioritize. When you wake up, you feel some golden threads stuck in your ear. Not for the lack of it. Not for silence. It was the wall inspector you caught not weeping during the dawn choir's ode to unworn wedding rings. Left-hand edition. His note reads, auditory obstruction equals emotional evasion. Offense. Dual olives plus compulsory vow renewal sob seminar. You unthread. One's tangled in your ear hair. You yank. It hurts. Counts toward today's tier quota. Silver linings. It's a mainstream fact that first-class Byzantine weepers sold word-for-word crying scripts on parchment, each marked by occasion, intensity, and volume. An interesting tidbit about the Death Experience bestseller. It's wail #7B. Moderate despair with hint of betrayal, funeral, and tax audit compatible, which is usually sold as a package with sniffle add-on pack, nasal drip included. And here is the phrase that starts an academic debate. Historians still debate whether Emperor Constantine VII ghostwrote Weep Sequence Omega under a pen name to avoid Union royalties. Obviously, he did. A guy once claimed that his shadow deserved a tax because it did emotional labor without pay. Then he complained. Then taxed the tears. Efficiency. Today's mail is brought by a wailing messenger pigeon. The same from Tuesday. The scroll falls to the ground, and it crashes on the sill to cry out script 0C. Bearer of emotional merchandise, feathered franchise division. You strip the message off its leg. Immediate attention needed. Audit bootleg sob scripts in Market District. Undercover operation. Disguise required. Oh no, not this. Last time, you pulled an undercover stunt of a grief tourist and got caught crying too much at a fake funeral and got promoted and then demoted. Then mildly excommunicated. You find your least offensive disguise. You take a floppy hat and a fake beard that is slightly moth-eaten, along with a tunic with "I love regulated sorrow" written in a suspiciously fresh thread. It's total mayhem in the marketplace. Vendors are selling knockoff hankies, instant grief pills, just add onions, and scrolls that say things like Official Imperial Whale number 3, almost legal edition. You check out vendor number 7. He's a guy called Demos. His eyebrows look like startled caterpillars. He whispers, "You look moist. Interested in Tirana-tube? Guaranteed to pass state inspections. That also doubles as soup stock." You shake your head, looking for scripts. The good stuff. He grins. He hands you a scroll and whispers, "Wail #7B++. Deluxe Betrayal, now with extra tremble. It's a new edition," he winks. "Contains footnotes about how to fake the snot without using onions." You give him a fake olive coupon. He hands you the scroll. Transaction complete. Or so you think. Boom. Guild enforcers crash the stall, helmets shaped like weeping rams. The lead officer, Niketas, points at you with a shrug and red-eye aggression. Undercover crier detected. The crowd gasps. Demos bolts. You run after him in the streets filled with goat's pee and expired myrrh. He trips over a sleeping dog. You tackle him. Gently. It's against union rules to use too much force during stressful arrests. You hold him down. He sobs real tears. "I have kids. And a mortgage on my onion stash." You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You haul him to the ministry. Interrogation chamber smells like old incense and regret. Eustathios stands next to a table of confiscated scripts. "Bootlegger," he sighs. Demos whimpers. Charges include the illegal distribution of trembles, illegal saline enhancements, and oh no, selling joy sob hybrids. They're popular. People like options. Eustathios doesn't flinch. Options are chaos. Chaos is taxable. Mephaza does nothing but read the rights to the audience. You have the right to remain silent. A eunuch recites, "You have the right to remain silent. If you do, we'll put you in the Department of Unpleasant Echoes until you cry in public." Demos. Confesses. Names suppliers. He got moved back to Snot Quality Assurance. This is poetic justice. We will have confiscated contraband stew, grief pills and bootleg onions. Tastes like despair and low tide. Helena comes to join you with a new title of Chief Inspector of Emotional Theft. "Promotion," she rasps. "Now I raid script dens. Full circle. Also, you'll get hats for free. A vial slides your way. Emergency saline. Citrus burst." Whenever the bootleggers cry real tears, you hug her. Mistake. If you're outside the state-sanctioned circle and you weep, you get a free ticket to the Poets Slam. You're scheduled for tonight. Theme, Odes to Mild Disappointment, Revised Edition. You've started drafting yours. Asterisk roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for sanity's sake, again. Star. In the afternoon, you're called upon for the Great Recall of the Scrolls. It turns out that heretics actually wrote 50% of the so-called official scrolls sold last month, as they blessed the tremble instructions with insufficient sorrow. You're sent on a door-to-door mission to collect contaminated products. One woman refuses. "This script was helpful during my mother-in-law's funeral." You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You present her with a state-approved alternative. A burlap scroll with "I love Imperial compliance," stitched by a cheap machine. She sobs real tears. You make a note of it as organic acquisition. Bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is marginally less terrible. You recite your revised ode, Crowd Murmurs. The judge, a former courtroom crier who lost his voice shouting at tax auditors, awards you the title of Most Likely to Survive Another Week Extended Warranty Edition. The prize is a slightly used candle and a free sob coupon, not valid at funerals, goat escapes, and bootleg gas. You absorb it. Leave early. Outdoors. The Night Weepers Guild sings Lament for Forgotten Coupons. Redux. You sing along. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion, doesn't matter. Tomorrow's task will be funeral of a scratched lute string. The music dies, so did your willpower. But at least you are no longer Mima and G the bootleg sobs anymore. Yet, you open your eyes to the sound of your teeth chattering, not from the cold, but because of how terrified you feel after the dream in which you were forced to cry on demand, in front of a goat wearing a judge's wig. The pigeon is once again sitting on your chest, pecking your collarbone. You say, "That's a union violation." It ignores you, swallows a button. You quietly submit a complaint about a hostile work environment for resting your chest on top of him. You roll over. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You whimper into your golden hanky. He leaves. Small victories. Also, your breath smells like yesterday's contraband stew. Priorities. Byzantine criers participated in state-sponsored contests known as cry-offs, where they would compete for who could cry the loudest or for the longest. Fun fact, the winners received gold handkerchiefs and a lifetime supply of onions. Losers, sent far away to Thrace, where the wind screams louder than it ever did, and the goats lodge formal complaints about their lack of feelings. Historians still argue whether Basil II, Byzantine Emperor and lemon enthusiast, rigged the 899 AD Grand Sob Finals by bribing judges with lemons from his homeland. Obviously, he did. A man once cried because his grapes were too symmetrical, then taxed symmetry, then cried again. Emotional roller coaster. Today's message comes via a sobbing homing ferret wearing a tiny saddlebag stamped with the guild seal, a teardrop crushing a spreadsheet. Important. Join quarterly cry-off competition. The Lament for Lost Left Sandals theme means failure means a reassignment to the Bureau of Unpleasant Echoes. Longer stay. So you moan. When you last competed, you let out a big hiccup during your wail. Then, you got disqualified for using unauthorized frog energy. Also, your robe still smells of fermented barley from being spilled on you. You arrive early to warm up. There are many marble benches, gold cloth, and a big, teardrop-shaped stage in the arena. Classy, also creepy, like a coliseum for emotional gladiators. Eustathios greets you at the door with a clipboard and a vial of emergency saline enhancer, citrus burst flavor. He spritzes your eyes. It burns. Authenticity boost, he croaks. Judges dislike it when one cries. They claim I lack essential qualities. Tears flow. He nods. Good. Now remember, chew slowly. Sob rhythmically. And please don't laugh if the fool falls in the soup again. For God's sake. Too late. You remember last month. Jester tripped. Soup splashed the treasurer. You laughed. You were demoted to a tier sampler for imported onions for 3 days, which was bad. Still twitch when you smell chives. The cry-off begins. Helena, Senior Whaler Guard 2, is first. She begins script 7C, Lament mid-masticate, Royal Eating Tear. Choose, sob, swallow, repeat. A crumb gets stuck in her throat. She coughs. The room freezes. Someone gasps. Is that dry heaving? Panic. She fake sobs louder, covers it with a dramatic forehead-to-floor collapse. Applause. Crisis averted. Also, now there's quail juice on her scroll. Doesn't matter. Moisture is moisture. Your turn. A combination of an elbow jab and a gong. You launch into script 5E. Equinoctial weeps for balanced sorrow. Must include symmetrical tear paths down both cheeks. You aim for precision. Wind gusts. Left tear veers toward the ear. The right tear plunges into the collar. Eustathios scribbles notes. Asymmetrical output. You murmur curses after hearing something. Silently. Swearing when the state cries will automatically send you to the Department of Unpleasant Echoes, where you have to listen to the tax code being read out 3 times. Rumor says one guy developed a twitch. Another started composing lullabies for spreadsheets. Dark times. Mid-contest, disaster. A pigeon swoops down on the stage, snatches the ceremonial bread loaf, and sits on top of the primary judge's mitre. Gasps. Silence. According to protocol, the response must be immediate cries of grief over desecrated dough. You receive a wintry look from Fire Marshal and Emergency Addendum Gamma. Sobs for avian betrayal, Sacred Crumb Division. Performance to include clutched chest plus upward gaze as if beseeching heaven for better pest control. And so you launch in. Nail the gaze. Overdo the clutch. Rip your tunic. Exposed shoulder. Crowd murmurs. Not scandalized, impressed. Making our shoulders bare during state laments earns us vulnerability aesthetics bonus points. Eustathios adds a fig to your account. Progress. After the contest, lunch consists of a dish called Cryoff recovery gruel served on a bowl shaped like a weeping scale. You observe Niketas approach you, shrugging and with damp eyes. I just heard a rumor. Management is out hiring scabs. Budget criers from Thrace. I am so sorry, Jamie, you say as you spit out your stew. Scabs? During a sanctioned competition? That's emotional treason. Helena hears you. Grins. Perfect. We'll stage a silent sit-in outside the ministry. No tears. Just staring. You volunteer with a hint of moisture in your eyes. The frontline moisture ambassador is assigned to me. The job consists of looking sad, but not too sad. This is a piece of art. Later afternoon, it's the Great Hanky Recall. They discover that half the silk squares that were sent out last month had been woven by heretics who blessed the threads with insufficient sorrow. And you get sent from door to door like some hapless scavenger collecting those. One woman refuses. My husband last sighed into this handkerchief. You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You give her a government-approved substitute. Burlap with I love Imperial compliance cheap thread stitching. She sobs real tears. You note it down as organic acquisition. Bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is marginally less terrible. You recite your revised ode, Crowd Murmurs. You get a prize from the judge, the same former high-pitched crier who lost his voice screaming at tax auditors. You get most likely to survive another week, extended warranty edition. What's your prize? A slightly used candle and a coupon that gets you one free sob session. Excludes funerals, goats, and bootleggers. You take it. Leave early. Outside, the Night Weepers Guild chants lament for forgotten coupons. Redux. You join them. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow's assignment. Funeral for a scratched lute string. Music died. So did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not exiled to Thrace. Yet, when you wake up with your tongue stuck to the inside of your cheek, it's not because you're dehydrated or because of last night's sour wine. It's because of the mandatory midnight lament for our now expired lute strings. The script called for audible tongue clicks between sobs to signify musical bereavement. You did it too much. Now your saliva glands are unionizing. You drink brine from a jug labeled emergency moisture. State approved, citrus burst. Tastes like regret and low tide with a hint of massive cheating. Works. Eyes water instantly. The ceiling inspector hears it. Nods through the keyhole. You get a sticky note that says, sufficient moisture before dawn. Take the +1 fig voucher. Non-transferable, non-refundable, non-edible. You put it in your pocket. Let's trade it for silence later. Doubtful. Did you know Byzantine officials basically licked tears? Yup. They literally tasted royal tears to authenticate the emotion with the help of silver spoons. Did you know the first tasters of saffron were given bonuses of saffron and portraits of saints who were crying? Worst performers? They were transferred to the Department of Suspicious Saliva. In this place, they spent their days sniffing strangers' cheeks. In other words, they were researching the origin of tears. In a statement about open scholarly debate, we read, historians still argue whether Emperor Michael III instituted Tear-tasting Tuesdays to distract from the goat coronation scandal. Obviously, the emperor did. A man once cried because his grapes were too symmetrical. Then they declared symmetry a sin. Then taxed it. Then cried again, emotional whiplash as state policy. Today, the weeping courier ferret brought our task. Same as yesterday. The scroll drops, collapses on your window ledge, and squeals script 0D. Bearer of liquid legitimacy, ferret division. You peel off the message from its tail. Go to the Imperial Tear-Tasting Tribunal, verify the authenticity of Emperor's mourning weep. Failure means moving to goat's pea quality. Senior deal. No, not this. You're not tasting anything again. Last time you pulled tasting duty, you gagged on a tear that tasted like pickled regret and unpaid taxes. I got a written warning for unapproved palate rejection. Plus, the incident got your robe smelling like fermented barley. You arrive early to rehearse. The tasting room is already outfitted with silver trays, jeweled goblets, and centerpieces made of weeping willow branches dipped in resin, so they cry forever, quietly. Cool, also creepy. It feels like a funeral party for a living being who studied chemistry. As you step through the door, Eustathios meets you holding a clipboard and a vial whose label reads, Emergency Palate Cleanser. Lemon zest and mild trauma. He spritzes your tongue with the liquid. It stings. Authenticity prep, he croaks. Furthermore, the Emperor detests insipid whining. Says they are lacking gravitas, that's why you blink fast. Tears flow. He nods. Good. Now remember, sip gently. Sob rhythmically. The jester inadvertently causes trouble again, prompting gods urging for others not to laugh like they did before. You remember last month. Jester tripped. Soup splashed the treasurer. You laughed. You became a tear sampler for imported onions. That was the worst 3 days of your life. Still twitch when you smell chives. The tasting begins. You sip the first sample, tear number 1, Mourning Lament for Unread Scroll, left margin only. Savory flavor with a hint of despair. Verdict. Authentic. Slight oversalting. Dock half a figure. Second sample, tear number 2, Midday Weep for Misplaced Sandal. Right foot, leather strap. You sip. This type of wine has flavor notes of leather, regret, and only a hint of goat. Verdict. Suspicious viscosity, possibly diluted with well water. Evening sob for Broken Mirror. Imperial Bathroom Wing. After the second sip, the drinkable strand snaking bottle takes the cake. Taste notes. Vanity, broken glass, expensive perfume. Verdict. Organic response. Probably. He scribbles notes. Last test. Taste this. He held a vial saying, Tier number 4, the goat fresco. You stare. Goat smirks from the fresco behind him. You laugh, big mistake. Alarms blare. Guards drag you to the branding bench. The eunuch brandisher sighs. Again, he heats the teardrop iron, saying, You are almost a regular. You bargain. What if I cry now? Extra salty. With snot. He pauses. Make it convincing. In the poem, we see an innovative approach, as well as a combative angel. And all become the types of levers, analogies, and metaphors dear to the heart of the poet. Real tears. Snot is optional but included. Device words. Saline levels acceptable. Barely. The eunuch lowers the iron. Lucky. Paraphrase this 14 words gator, who laughed at the goat fresco, was made to follow the father of Thrace. They forced him to marry a sheep. You feel uneasy. Thank him. He shrugs. Just doing my job. Also, tip in olives next time. My kids need shoes. And therapy. After the tasting, we are told to write, Simulated bereavement for a lost bookmark, Imperial Library Wing. On blank parchment while clutching script 6L, sobs for interrupted reading, Sacred Marginalia Division. The aim is to convey the tragedy of narrative abandonment. You put your back into it. A librarian applauds, then whispers, Do you do funerals for overdue scrolls? We are overloaded with work. You confirm. Take a deposit in ink-stained bread. Desperation fuels the empire. Today's lunch includes taste test recovery gruel served in a bowl shaped like a weeping scale. Helena is with you now, wearing a new brand, a little tear on her arm. Promotion, she rasps. Now I examine other people's sobs. Full circle. Plus free onions, she says, handing you a vial. Emergency saline. Citrus burst. Let the goat fresco not judge you for anything you do. You hug her. Mistake. If you cry while touching someone outside your state-sanctioned group, you have to go to a poetry slam. You're scheduled for tonight. The theme is Odes to Mild Disappointment, revised edition. You've begun yours. Roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for my sanity / again. When the afternoon arrives, it's the great hanky recall. Half the silk squares that were issued last month were woven by heretics. They blessed the threads with insufficient sorrow. You are sent door to door to collect the contaminated fabrics. One woman refuses. This handkerchief soaked up my husband's last breath. You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You propose a state-approved substitute. A burlap bag with I love Imperial compliance sewn in cheap thread. She sobs real tears. You record it in your organic acquisition bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is marginally less terrible. You recite your revised ode, crowd murmurs. The judge who lost his voice to tax auditors now awards you most likely to survive another week, extended warranty edition. Your prize consists of a used and slightly melted candle plus one free sob session, not usable during funerals, with goats or bootleggers. You take it. Leave early. The Night Weepers Guild chants Lament for Forgotten Coupons, Redux, and you join them. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow's assignment. A funereal for a harp string that got damaged. Music died. So did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not engaged to a sheep. Yet, you wake up with your left eyelid glued shut. Not from sleep crust, not from cheap mascara, but from your mandatory pre-dawn lament for expired harp strings of last night. The script said, extend ocular contact with a damp hanky to simulate instrument-based bereavement, which you overdid. Again, used the golden one. Now it's fused to your face like a mask fit for a grief show. You peel it off with a butter knife. It hurts. Also counts toward today's tear quota. In Byzantine times, pain was viewed as productivity. You can never cry in public. Otherwise, you'll be punished with exile in salt mines, precisely in the ones in Thrace, where the goats unionized to report about insufficient wailing going on. Did you know? Exiles were given sorrow starter kits, consisting of a burlap hanky, 3 onions, and a pamphlet called How to Weep When Nobody Is Watching. Spoiler. Someone is, which prompted them to sob. Scholars have been debating whether the Emperor Nikephoros I was either a boring person or if he invented the silent mourner purge so that the state could raise its quota for tears. A man once fined a monk for meditating too peacefully, described as emotional tax evasion. He then cried over the paperwork, then taxed the tears. Full circle. Today's news comes via a crying badger, yes. Really, with a leather pouch with a ministry stamp. The stamp. A teardrop strangling a spreadsheet. Message. Do it now. Audit D74. Suspiciously dry citizens. Undercover. Disguise required. And bring onions. Oh no, not this. Last time you went dry-eyed tourist. You were caught too convincingly weeping at a manufactured bread shortage and got promoted. Then demoted. After that, I was given the assignment to the Department of Suspicious Moisture. The organization gave me a job for 6 weeks. Still have nightmares about cheek-sniffing strangers. You pull out your least suspicious disguise. A floppy hat, a fake beard, 60% moth, and a tunic that says, "I love quiet contemplation," quietly, blends right in. You reach District 7, a sleepy district known for excessive smiling and unregulated chuckling while tax collecting. Crime level, emotional. You wander past bakeries where people laugh as they buy bread. Barbaric. A child skips past you, humming. You shudder. This is anarchy with sprinkles. I approach the stall of my first target, the old man Gregorio's, officially charged with 3 consecutive days without audible grief. He's selling figs. Smiling. In public. Without a permit. You clear your throat. Lovely day for sorrow? He blinks. I'm happy. Wow, your granddaughter is learning to walk. Unlicensed joy? That's a Class C emotional violation. He shrugs, pulls out a scroll. Got a waiver, signed by the patriarch. Subsection grief exempt of the grandparental bliss clause. You look stunned. That's not real, he winks. It is now extra payment done for gold leaves. You log. Organic happiness. Investigate patriarch's ink supplier. The second target is a woman named Zoe. She is the laughing baker who giggles while kneading dough. Taking all evidence into consideration, the baker doesn't have much flour. Everyone has probably noticed. The witnesses claim she hasn't wept since the great flour shortage of 893. You enter her shop. Smell of warm bread. Sound of laughter. Your soul recoils. You fake sob into your sleeve. She pats your back. Rough day, love? Have a roll. It's complimentary. You can keep it. Eat it. It's delicious. Also treasonous. You whisper, "Don't you mourn?" "Not even a little." She grins. "I will cry when my oven breaks, or my husband sings." You jot notes. Suspected emotional hoarder. Saving up sadness for sale. Mid-operation disaster. A street artist begins juggling watermelons while whistling along. Crowd gathers. Claps. No one cries. Not even you. Guards appear. Point at you. Undercover crier detected. The crowd gasps. Performer drops a melon. It explodes. Juice sprays your scroll. Eustathios materializes from behind a cart. Compromised, he sighs. But the juice adds moisture. When you hear the words partial credit, your life changes. You're instantly reassigned. You're the junior moisture compliance officer, specifically for the melon division. Your job is to stand next to stalls where melons are sold. Your job also involves sobbing inconsolably whenever citrus is cut. You take it. Better than the salt mines. Lunch today is a stew made from confiscated joy pills and unlicensed laughter. Tastes like despair and cinnamon. Helena comes up to you and says, "I am now the chief inspector of unpermitted smiles." "Promotion," she wheezes. "Now I charge people for smiling without proof." Full circle. "Take this. It will free frowns." She gives you a vial. Emergency saline. Citrus burst. This is to hug her when happiness attacks. Mistake. If you contact an out-of-state group, they'll weep. You're scheduled for tonight. The theme of the show is Odes to Mild Disappointment, Director's Cut, and you have begun drafting yours. Roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for sanity's sake. Still, the afternoon brings the Great Smile Recall, which reveals that half of the official happiness passes sold last month were forgeries made by heretics who blessed the signatures with insufficient guilt. You go door to door collecting contaminated passes. One man refuses. "This permit helped me get through my mother-in-law's birthday." You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You give him a burlap scroll, which is state-approved, has "I love Imperial sorrow" stitched in cheap thread. He sobs real tears. You record it as being acquired organically. Bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is marginally less terrible. You recite your revised ode, crowd murmurs. The judge also doesn't shut the hell up. He's the same old crier who lost his voice while screaming at the tax auditors. Anyway, he gives you the award for most likely to survive another week, Platinum Edition. The prize is a slightly used candle and a coupon for one free sob session. Excludes funerals, goats, bootleggers, and melons. You take it. Leave early. The Night Weepers Guild chants, lament for forgotten coupons, outside, director's cut. You add your voice. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Funeral for a scratched drum skin. Rhythm died. Tomorrow's assignment, so did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not exiled to Thrace. Yet, when you wake up, you find the right ear lobe stuck to the pillow. Not from sweat or drool, but from last night's mandatory overnight lament for an expired drum skin. The script commanded prolonged contact of the ear with a damp hanky. This was meant to simulate percussive bereavement. You used the golden one, of course. Now it's fused to your face like a Bluetooth headset from grief that only works for sorrow. You have to peel it off with a spoon this time. Butter knives are in the shop after the eyelid incident. It hurts. Also counts toward today's tier quota. Pain is just unpaid overtime in Byzantium. The Byzantines would send Ken whining to foreign courts by the bucket load. The Vikings, specifically, were big customers, employing them as battle chants or as boozy karaoke on their longboats. An interesting fact is that the top exports featured wail #7B, deluxe betrayal, and sniffle pack gamma, nasal drip plus echo, which were all sold in canisters labeled, do not shake. The scholarly debate opens. Historians still argue whether Emperor Romanos I personally approved the Export Sob Labeling Act to avoid a diplomatic incident, because a loaf of bread labeled as a source of despair incidentally does so. He did, obviously. Man once cried because his grapes were too symmetrical, then taxed symmetry, then shipped the tears to Norway, called it cultural diplomacy, efficiency. The scroll supplied today comes courtesy of a distressed otter. Yes, you did read that correctly. It comes equipped with a tiny waterproof satchel which bears the seal of the export ministry, in this case, a teardrop on a Viking longboat. Check cans of laments shipped to the king of the Norsemen. Verify salinity and scream integrity. If you fail, you will be assigned a junior role in goat diplomacy. Not this. When you last examined the export quality sobs, you sneezed and accidentally contaminated batch 4 with happiness. I was penalized for emotional crosstalk. Also, your robe still reeks of fermented barley and regret from this incident. The export warehouse smells like salt, mildew, and the taste of death 3 times. The clay amphory labeled Cry Batch 897 Alpha, medium despair, funeral and raid compatible, appear in endless rows. People are packing boxes with teardrop jars, vapor packed for their journey on a lamppost. It doesn't break. Weeps louder. Everyone applauds. You go up to Supervisor Demetrios, whose beard is perpetually crusted with salt. New shipment, he rasps. Norse order. Big one. They are seeking maximum battle cry energy with an underlying maternal loss. Tricky combination. You nod. Take the clipboard. Begin audit. You pop open the canister marked wail #7B++. A wail goes up. Deep, guttural. Just the thing for you to lament the loss of your childhood sled dog. The flavor comes across as salty, with a hint of pine resin and a light touch of mead. Verdict: authentic. Bonus points for sniffles included and embedded. Second Ken, Sniffle Pack Gamma, Fjord Edition. You open it. Nasal drip echoes like a haunted fjord. The crowd murmurs appreciatively. Verdict: suspiciously moist, possibly diluted with melted ice. Look into Norse intermediaries. Canister 3, Sob Sequence Omega, Ragnarok Cut. You pop it open. Silence. Then a single perfect whimper. Goosebumps. Verdict: ah, organic response. likely a recording of the rehearsal for the apocalypse. "Try this for the final test," he said before he revealed a vial labeled Tier 5. "The goat fresco incident. Export reserve." You stare. Goat smirks from the label. You laugh. Big mistake. Alarms blare. Guards drag you to the branding bench. The eunuch brandisher sighs. Again? He heats the teardrop iron. You're becoming a brand ambassador. You bargain. "What if I cry now? Extra salty. With optional snot." He pauses. "Make it convincing. You could also give me a third one." You start up script 9Z. "Last-minute lament for my own poor choices." Director's cut. Sob hard. Real tears. Snot is optional but included. Device words. Saline levels acceptable. Not much. The man lowers the bar. "Lucky. A guy was transferred to Thrace because of laughing at the fresco which depicts goats. They made him marry a sheep." You shudder after it exports wool as emotional textiles. "Thank him." He shrugs. "Just doing my job. Also, tip in olives next time. My kids need shoes." And emotional support goats. After the inspection, an assignment came. Pretend to mourn the loss of an or Imperial Navy wing. You used to stand beside the broken paddle along with script 6-0. Sobs for nautical abandonment. Sacred rowing department. Above all, it was to express the agony of dreams without movement. You tried your best. A sailor applauds, then whispers, "Do you do funerals for sunken ships? We've got more than enough work." You smile. Take a deposit of salted bread. Desperation fuels maritime empires. Lunchtime brings export audit recovery gruel, served in a sad longship-shaped bowl or dish. Helena joins you with a new label, a small tear on her other wrist. "Promotion," she rasps. "Now I inspect export-grade despair." Full circle. Also, seawater to take home. She hands you a vial. Emergency saline. Citrus burst. You hug her. Because when the goat fresco invades foreign markets. Mistake. If you cry outside of the state-sanctioned group, you must go to the poetry slam. You're scheduled for tonight. Theme: Odes to Mild Disappointment. Extended Universe. You've started drafting yours. Asterisk roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for sanity's sake. Still. Again. Star. Later in the day, you'll be part of the Great Label Recall. Apparently, half of the official export labels sold last month were forged by heretics who blessed the warnings with insufficient doom, and you get to go crate to crate collecting contaminated merchandise. One dockworker refuses. "This label helped me pass Swedish customs." You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You give him a government-approved replacement. A burlap scroll stitched with Ionosaurus or Imperial moisture in weak thread. He sobs real tears. You record it under organic acquisition. Bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Evening poetry slam is marginally less terrible. You recite your revised ode. Crowd murmurs. The judge gives you a most likely to survive another week collector's edition award. He is the same former crier who lost his voice in front of the tax auditors. The prize is a used candle and a coupon for one free sob session. Excludes funerals, goats, bootleggers, melons, and export containers. You accept it. Leave early. You join the Night Weepers Guild, chanting Ultimate Edition of the Lament for the Forgotten Coupons. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices or cares. Progress. You collapse into bed. Ceiling inspector's shadow lingers. You whimper preemptively. He leaves. Floorboard auditor taps twice. You sniffle. Wall inspector peers through the keyhole. You gasp dramatically. All clear. You sigh. Doesn't count. But the pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your sill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow's assignment. Funeral for a scratched lyre string. Harmony died. So did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not married to a sheep. Yet. You woke up with your left nostril glued shut. Not from allergy, not from last night's stew, but from mandatory pre-dawn nasal lament for lyre string malfunction. Script demanded extended olfactory contact with saline-soaked parchment to simulate resonance bereavement. Once again, you used the golden hanky. Mistake. It is stuck to your face now, like a grief-infused nasal strip with a sadist designed by a sewing machine. You take a fishbone to peel it off, but the butter knife, which is still in the shop, and the spoon are on a lunch break. It hurts. Also counts toward today's tier quota. Byzantium runs on pain points. Literally. The Turks didn't even have kaklat. To explain, this was a cadaverous chocolate cake that Emperor Zeno and his decadent court threw to the grounds and turned to the hilltop from Constantinople. Quirky tidbit. What is the purpose of throwing each other orange peels? The statement all citizens must weep during tax audits or provide notarized proof of recent personal tragedy is being subject to scholarly debate. Historians still debate whether Emperor Constantine XI personally blamed the CRYERS strike for the Ottoman breach. Obviously, he did. A man is reported to have yelled from the walls, "If you just cried louder, maybe they guns missed." Then they cried about it, then got hit by a cannonball. Poetic justice. Today's scroll came to me via a sobbing squid. Ink sac strapped with a message tube bearing the guild's last ever seal. A teardrop flipping off a spreadsheet. Final warning. The Grand Sob Chamber is where the last Imperial cry-off takes place. Theme. Longing for the possibility. Winners exiled. You sigh at the sight of the phrase. Do you even recall when you last competed? You hiccuped mid-cry and ended up being DQ'd for unauthorized amphibian energy. Your robe still smells like fermented barley and regret. Plus now like low tide thanks to the squid courier. You arrive at the arena. Half burned, half looted. But the stage? Still shaped like a giant tear duct. Classy till the end. Also creepy. It's like a squash court for emotional gladiators who got trapped. When you reach the gate, Eustathios is there with a clipboard and a vial named Final Momentous Saline Enhancer. Zest and ultimate acceptance. He sprays your eyes. It burns. Authenticity boost, he croaks. Furthermore, the Emperor needs dry farewells. It says they're lacking in gravitas. You blink rapidly. Tears flow. He nods. Good. Now remember, chew slowly. Sob rhythmically. Don't you dare laugh if the fool falls into the soup again. Oh wait. You remember last month. Jester tripped. Soup splashed the treasurer. You laughed. You got demoted to tier sampler for imported onions. Now, the worst 3 days of your life. Still twitch when you smell chives or impending doom. The cry-off begins. First contestant, Helena, senior whaler MM2, is now sporting a hat made of reclaimed gold leaf and existential angst. She launches into script 7C, Lament Mid-Mastication, Regal Dining Tier, Apocalyptic Edition. Chew, sob, swallow, repeat. A crumb gets stuck in her throat. She coughs. The room freezes, what's left of it. Someone gasps. Is that dry heaving? Panic. She fake sobs louder, covers it with a dramatic forehead-to-floor collapse. Applause. From 3 people. And a goat. Crisis averted. Also, now there's ash on her scroll. Doesn't matter. Moisture is moisture. Even when the ceiling's on fire. Your turn. It's time to unleash the elbow jab with a gong cue. In script 5E, you, in the Babylonian style, fully weep, equinoctial weeps for balanced sorrow, final season. Required, symmetry of tears. You aim for precision. Wind gusts through the hole in the wall. Left tear veers toward the ear. The right tear plunges into the collar. Eustathios scribbles notes. Asymmetrical output. Dock half a figure. Also, the fig warehouse burned down. You mumble some curses. Silently. If anyone swears during the state yell, they are automatically moved into the Department of Unpleasant Echoes, which is essentially a person yelling the tax codes into a well. Rumor says he developed a twitch. Another started composing lullabies for spreadsheets. Dark times. Literally. The torches are flickering. Mid-contest, disaster. A pigeon which came down from the sky in Section 3. dives on stage and grabs a ceremonial loaf of bread and shits on the mitre worn by the chief to judge. Again, gasps, silence. Next, protocol says you must grieve for desecrated dough during societal collapse. You are given emergency addendum gamma omega, sobs for avian betrayal, sacred crumb division, doomsday cut. The performance must include clutched chest plus upward gaze, as if you beseech heaven for better pest control or a miracle. You launch in, nail the gaze, overdo the clutch, rip your tunic, exposed shoulder, crowd murmurs, not scandalized, impressed. If you expose your shoulders during the state laments, you are adding bonus points to the Office of Vulnerability Aesthetics. Eustathios Fig works out your ledger, then crosses it out. Fig reserves depleted. 1 olive with a slight curse. After the contest, we get to eat a recovery meal called Collapse Recovery Gruel. It is served in a bowl shaped like a weeping scale. This bowl is cracked all the way down the middle. Niketas is with you, talking via shrugs, angry wet eyes, and now smoke signals. They slide a note to you. New rumor? Management is fleeing to Nicaea, providing remote grieving contracts. Will cry via a carrier bird. You spit your stew out at him. Payment in dried apricots and vague promises. Scabs? During an apocalypse. That's emotional treason. Helena hears you, grins through soot. Perfect. We'll stage a silent sit-in outside the burning ministry. No tears, just staring. I volunteer with slightly moistened eyes and swords. You get assigned to be the Frontline Moisture Ambassador, Armed Division. Your job? Looks sad, but not too sorry. It's an art. Also, you have a dagger now, Union perk. The afternoon brings the Great Hanky Recall, final clearance. As it turns out, half the silk squares issued last month were woven by heretics who blessed the threads with insufficient sorrow and flammable dye. You are sent door to round up these contaminated kerchiefs. One woman refuses. My husband's last breath was soaked in this hanky. You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You gift her a state-approved substitute. Burlap with I love Imperial compliance. Now with 20% more despair. Stitched in cheap, colored thread. She sobs real tears. You mark it down. Producing organic traffic. Bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Also, the fig is on fire. You blow it out. Deduct half a point. An evening poetry slam is held in a crumbling bathhouse. Your final draft is red. Asterisk, roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / for sanity's sake. They're all gone. Asterisk, the crowd murmurs. Choice of theme, odes to mild disappointment, apocalypse remix. What's left of it? He judges. The same ex-caller whose voice gave out as he shouted at tax guy. Most likely to survive another week. Spoiler alert, you won't. Prize is a used candle and a coupon for 1 free sob session. Excludes funerals, goats, bootleggers, melons, export containers, and reality. You take it. Leave early. The Night Weepers Guild chants lament for forgotten coupons, post-credit scene. Outside and you join. Fake sob louder than usual. No one notices, or cares, or is alive. Progress? When you say bed, do you mean a pile of smoldering tapestries? The ceiling inspector's shadow doesn't appear. Probably dead. Or promoted. Floorboard auditor doesn't tap. Wall inspector doesn't peer. You whimper anyway. Habit. The pigeon from this morning is back. Perched on your windowsill. Still crying. You offer it a golden thread. It swallows it. Files no complaint. Miracle or indigestion. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow's assignment. Funeral for a scratched mandolin string. Music died. So did your willpower. But hey, at least you're not married to a sheep. Yet, though with the Ottomans at the gate, who knows? Love finds a way even in Thrace. You wake up with your whole face melted to the remains of your golden hanky. Not in a deep philosophical sense. Not in an exaggerated way, but quite literally, like a mucilaginous mummy that has been buried in a cowshed and then unwrapped from the grief-based bania gauze of a careless intern who missed the safety meeting. The pigeon is standing on your forehead now, pecking, not aggressively, more like performance reviewing. It drops a tiny scroll onto your nose. Final notice. Proceed to last wall for final Imperial lament. The theme is cry because the gates break. Dress code is subdued apocalypse chic. Bonus. If you cry sufficiently, they might leave you to the fountaining. You peel off the hanky with a shard of pottery. Take skin with it. Counts toward today's tier quota, also tomorrow's, and possibly next week's. Efficiency, the mainstream truth, as being subjected to the fall of Constantinople in 1453, somewhere in the palace, arguments were being held over scheduled laments, ceremonial repanegyrizations of great imperial importance conducted by the emperor and/or empress. Among them, one nobleman mid-wail atop a crumbling tower, "Jesus Christ, why weren't my referring managers clear?" Script 9Z, a last-minute lament for my own poor decisions, as the Ottoman canon turned his lament into dust. Here's a fun fact. What was the last payment the Byzantines made? The use of one olive voucher with a stamp of "for services rendered," emotional division. It expired before the ink dried. Historians continue to argue over whether Emperor Constantine's final words upon seeing the city fall were, "The city is lost," or, "Did anyone audit the goat fresco tears?" Obviously the latter. A man once cried because his grapes were too symmetrical. Then taxed symmetry. Then, "I got hit by a cannonball mid-sob." Full circle. Poetic. Slightly sticky. You walk on streets that smell of smoke, sweat, and old government. Buildings lean like drunk senators after a tax audit. You salute a child who runs past you with a scroll named wail #7B. Doomsday Remix. She salutes back with a hanky. Professional respect transcends collapse. You arrive at the last wall. Half broken, half burned, but the set, still intact, shaped like a giant tear duct. Of course it is. Classy till the magma hits. The table was laden with broken vials and melted spoons beside which Eustathios was waiting. Only the onion has survived the fire. "Final assignment," he croaks. My voice is hoarse after shouting payroll updates into crumbling wells. Cry as the gates fall. Improvise, but keep it metrically consistent. HR, Human Resources, still gives a thought. He hands you a scroll that states, "Script Omega. Sob till the end. Director's cut. Unrated. No saline booster this time. Just you. And trauma. And possibly shrapnel." The first cannon blast shakes the ground. Dust rains from the sky like God's dandruff. You no gong. No elbow jab. Just screaming. You launch into performance. Chew cheek. Think sad thoughts. Tax audits. Expired olives. Your landlord's singing. The goat fresco. Works. Tears flow. Crowd, what's left of it, murmurs appreciatively. A soldier throws rose petals. One lands in your mouth. You swallow it. Tastes like ash and pollen. Hiccup during the performance. Same frog energy vibe as Section 1. Rubble-created gasps. The emperor glares from his horse. His wife fake sobs louder to cover your blunder. Heroic. You owe her olives or possibly your soul. Contractual fine print is ash now. Doesn't matter. Lunch is siege gruel served in a helmet shaped like a weeping baby. Helena comes on board with 3 new brands. Teardrops on both wrists, and one on her forehead that says, "Promoted to Chief Inspector of Impending Doom." Perk, she rasps. Now I review the final sobs of others. Full circle. Also free onions. Until the supply runs out. Which it did. Here's a rock. She slides you a pebble. Emergency saline substitute. Lick it. Pretend. You hug her. Mistake. If you cry outside a government-approved group, you owe us a poetry slam. You're scheduled for tonight in a ditch. For the theme Odes to Mild Disappointment franchise finale, you have started your ode to the franchise finale. Roses are red / my tears are fake / send help / or more olives / too late. We're all steak. Star. Afternoon brings the great onion recall. Turns out the last crate of state-approved crying vegetables was stolen by a rogue eunuch who wanted to start a grief-free commune in Crete. You're sent rubble to rubble collecting contaminated produce. One man refuses. This onion got me through both my mother-in-law's funeral and an eruption of catapults. You can't take it. You sympathize. Also, you have quotas. You provide him with an official replacement. A burlap sack with "I love Imperial compliance" stitched in charred letters. He sobs real tears. You register it as an organic acquisition bonus figure. Morale is slightly less dead. Also, the fig is imaginary. You eat it anyway. Tastes like hope and dust. An evening poetry slam is held in a crater. The judge, the same former crier who lost his voice screaming at tax auditors, announces you the most likely to survive another week. Spoiler: literally impossible. You get a used candle stub and a coupon for 1 free sob session. Excludes everything, including air, sanity, and this timeline. You take it. Leave early. You chant with them as the Night Weep Guild chants Lament for Forgotten Coupons. Series finale, post-credit scene, director's commentary. Outside, fake sob louder than usual. No one notices, or cares, or is conscious. Progress? You fall onto what used to be your bed. Now a pile of ash, broken scrolls, and one very judgmental pigeon. The ceiling inspector's shadow doesn't appear. Floorboard auditor doesn't tap. Wall inspector doesn't peer. You whimper anyway. Muscle memory. The pigeon coos. Drops one last scroll onto your chest. Message: congratulations. You've completed all mandatory laments and have been banished to Thrace. Luxury version. Comes with a goat, a less judgmental sheep, and one onion. Report immediately. Or don't. It won't matter. We are all doomed anyway. Doesn't count. But you're too tired to care. The walls shake again. Distant cheers. Ottoman drums. Or maybe someone dropped a lyre. Hard to tell. You close your eyes. The pigeon nestles into your armpit. Warm. Weirdly comforting. Somewhere a goat bleats. Probably wearing a crown. You smile. Unauthorized. But no one's left to fine you. For the first time in your life, silence. No cue. No script. No quota. Just you. And the end of everything. You drift off. Dream of olives. And quiet. And socks that don't stick to goat pee floors. And as you fall asleep, remember, at least no one asked you to bless a goat today. Probably. Being in Byzantium, someone is always inviting you to bless the goat. Usually right after lunch. Usually while crying. Often while being audited for improper tear viscosity. The goat didn't care. The goat never cared. Standing there munching on your last olive voucher, watching you with contempt, like you were the one who faked sob sequence theta in the siege of Antioch. And honestly, probably did. Goats have seen things. Goats have files. You made it. Through saline quotas. Through hanky recalls. Through poetry competitions that hurt you more than the Ottoman siege. You cried, choked on the giggle grits, tasted the royal tears. Spoiler: they taste like bureaucracy and low self-esteem. And the next day showed up with crust in your eyes and olives in your pockets. That's not survival. That's elite emotional labor. Gold star. Framed in burlap. Slightly damp. The empire fell. The scrolls burned. The golden hankies? Vikings might have stolen them and used them as napkins during karaoke nights. But your legacy? Immortal. In some dusty archive, maybe guarded by a sarcastic pigeon. Your name is inscribed next to most consistent mid-tier sobber, banquet and apocalypse division. They'll teach your sobbing in schools. Or at least in secret underground cryo chambers run by exiled eunuchs. So rest now, weary weeper. No audits tonight. No ceiling inspectors. No sudden gong cues. Just silence. And who knows, perhaps a dream where sandals are always handy. Where onions are optional. Where goats wear hats. Not crowns. Hats. Civilized ones. Sweet dreams.